Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Chris here. Doing a quick video on the Hall of Fame selections. Everybody knows I'm a baseball fan. Baseball is my sport, as is by Eddie there, Eddie Murray there, one of the greatest Royals of all time. I am a baseball fan. So people have been asking my thoughts on the whole Barry Bonds situation, Roger Clemens situation. But it's not just those guys. It's Gary Sheffield, it's Sammy Sosa too. Um, And my thought is this: the voting process is a joke. Um, David Ortiz got popped for performance enhancers at one point. He got popped for it. It was at a time when it wasn't illegal or banned in the game. He failed the drug test. Gary Sheffield, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, and Barry Bonds never failed an official drug test. They didn't. Not one that they ever got out into the public. The difference is um, Poppy David Ortiz was a good, jolly guy. He was a happier person. He was good with the media. That's the difference between him and those guys that didn't get in. Sammy Sosa was a little bit more friendly, but Garrett Sheffield and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were known to be kind of assholes. That's the difference to me. Roger Clemens wanted to win. Barry Bonds wanted to win. They're two of the greatest players of their generation. I'm not even going to touch on Pete Rose. I'll touch on Pete Rose for a brief bit here. Pete Rose is never getting in the Hall of Fame. He bet on the game. It's posted in the clubhouse as you can't bet on the game. He admitted to betting on the game to make money off a book. Like, he'll never get in. And he shouldn't get in. He broke the one rule and he probably rigged games to do so. So Pete Rose probably never going to get in. But for those other players like Barry Bonds and stuff, like Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter I've ever seen in my lifetime. The only guy I've ever seen get walked with the bases loaded, intentionally walked while the bases are loaded. That's how feared of a hitter he was. Career like 298 average, 762 home runs, more walks than anybody, more career walks than anybody in a season, like more home runs than anybody in a season. Like, the dude was a beast. He won 4 MVPs before he ever took steroids. 3 or 4 MVP awards before he ever stuck a needle in his ass. Like, he's just a great player. Roger Clemens, one of the most feared pitchers of his era. And this is before steroids. When he was up in Boston and in Toronto, like, he was feared. Like, legit feared. He's one of the best pitchers of his era. For these guys not to get in on a ballot, they got to change these rules, man. They got to make it so, like, players vote on this. Because these writers are holding grudges against players that they shouldn't be holding. And it's tainting the Hall of Fame. They have guys who were racists in the Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb used to sharpen his spikes. He's in the Hall of Fame. There are people who Babe Ruth was a drunk and a womanizer. He's in the Hall of Fame. If you're holding it, it's either you care about the numbers or you care about the person they were. Like, Barry Bonds was a flawed person. Gary Sheffield, he wasn't the best of. He wasn't a bad person, but he was a great player. Sammy Sosa, great player, and relatively nice guy. These guys don't belong in. Kurt Schilling, another guy, the bloody sock, should have won a couple of Cy Youngs, but one of the best pitchers of his era because he's controversial and has takes that everybody doesn't like. I'm not a fan of his takes either, but that fucking bloody sock is immortal in postseason. A postseason hero in the game. Like, how do you not put that guy in the Hall of Fame? So it's like, you got to look at it from a standpoint of either A, they belong it or they don't. The steroid era was a part of this game. It happened. And the league made money off of it while it did. A lot of money. Chicks dig the long ball. Remember those commercials? I do. They hyped it up for years. Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire saved the game of baseball with the home run race. Saved the game after the strike season. That was one of the most memorable times to be a baseball player. That and Cal Ripken's streak. Being from Baltimore, that was bigger here. But seeing those two go after the Roger Maris record was great. It was fun to watch. And they both broke it. That's the thing. They both pulled off the 62. They both hit over 62. McGwire hit a couple more than Sosa, but they both did it, and it was fun to watch both of them do it. It brought people back to the game. The current labor situation is going to fuck it all up and mess it up for everybody again. Come on, MLB, get your shit together, make a deal. But to not have like some of the greatest players of all time put into the Hall of Fame, it's ridiculous. Like Barry Bonds was a great player before steroids. Clemens was a great pitcher before steroids. Gary Sheffield was a great player. Sammy Sosa was a great player. Or a really good player. Maybe he doesn't get in, but I think he should. He helped save the fucking game. You know, Alex Rodriguez probably will never get in. He basically broke the rules. Manny Ramirez broke the rules. But if you put David Ortiz in, and let me be clear, I'm not slamming David Ortiz. I like Big Papi. I'm a fan. I like Big Papi. He was always fun to watch. He was always smiling. Like the shit's infectious. Like, and he was my favorite non-Oriole player because the dude was just that guy. He was just a fun guy to watch hit, and he hit. So if he can get in after failing a drug test at a time when it wasn't banned, you gotta let those other guys in because they never failed the drug test when it was banned or after it was banned because they were both done playing by the time it got banned in the game. It's that simple. Now you gotta wait on the Veterans Committee to do it, and those guys aren't always gonna be so nice about that. Look, don't believe it? Look what they did to Ron Santo and Buck O'Neil. Buck O'Neil and Ron Santo should have been in the Hall of Fame before they died, and neither of them got in. They're in now, but they can't give those speeches. For Ron Santo, that's terrible, because he was a great player. For Buck O'Neil, he was the historian for the Negro Leagues. That speech would have been so important, and we can't have it now, because they didn't give it to him while he was still alive. And they're going to do the same thing to Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and that's fucking insane to me. It's horrific to me. Like, they should let them in. I hope the Veterans Committee does the right thing and adjusts this right and rights these wrongs and lets these guys in. And they do it before they're both dead. Because if for them to not be able to give those speeches while they're alive, it's a travesty. The fact that they're not already in is an injustice. Those are my thoughts on the Hall of Fame voting. And for real, some of these writers should have their ballots taken away because they do some crazy shit. Like, they really do. Like Scott Rowland. Scott Rowland was a great player, and I'm glad he's getting the recognition he's getting because he was a great third baseman. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, though. Jeff Kent? Get the fuck out of here. He's not a Hall of Fame player. Good player. Solid. Hall of Famer? No. Absolutely not. Billy Wagner should have been in. He was one of the better closers of his era. Probably one of the best. Trevor Hoffman, same thing. Should have been in. Hell, Rafael Palmeiro, in my opinion, should be in. He's one of the better players of his era. The only reason he's not in is because he got popped for performance PEDs like right after he wagged his finger at Congress. But it wasn't illegal at the time. And that's the thing. It wasn't banned when these guys were doing it. It didn't get banned till later. So you gotta look at the steroid era, whether we like it or not, is a part of the game's history. And the Hall of Fame is supposed to be about the history of the game. You can't cover the history of baseball without going through the steroid era. I maybe gloss over the amphetamines era of the 60s and 70s where guys were taking greenies. Like, we all know they did it. People open talked about unleaded or leaded. Like popping amphetamines. Like, we know they were doing it. Players openly admitted to it. Nobody cared. The players openly had bottles of the shit in their locker rooms in the 80s. No one cared. Up until Congress got involved. So it had been going on for 20 years before Congress intervened. And no one cared. And then all of a sudden everybody gave a shit. That's what my thoughts are. If you're gonna cover the history of the game, the Hall of Fame is indicative of the history of the game. You cover the steroid era, and then you say, yeah, we put a stop to this shit. You're gonna cover the balls they just had this past year? Like giving some teams balls that flew out further versus ones that didn't? You're gonna cover the stickum and stuff, the spider tack and everything everybody was using? You gonna let those guys in? Garrett Cole? All these pitchers who were getting like their spin rates increased by using stickum or stuff to get more spin on the ball? You're gonna ban them too? No, you're not. So why do it to these other guys? That's weak. And it's unfair to those guys. And note, I'm not some weird let them do steroids guy. I mean, if they're going to do them, they're going to do them. There are other ways to get advantages in sports, and these guys will find them. But yeah, like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens definitely should have been in the Hall of Fame. You could argue against Gary Sheffield, you could argue against Sammy Sosa, but Clemens and Bonds, no doubt about it, Hall of Famers. And the fact that they're not in is a joke. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the whole Hall of Fame thing, because all my friends know I love baseball. We're asking about it. As I always say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, mask up, get vaccinated, get the booster, do what we got to do to end this. Video incoming on that because some people need to have some perspective. And I'm not going to do it right now because it's late and I'm getting ready to go to bed. But I want to let y'all know that there's one incoming on that whole situation. Because I got something to say to Bill Maher's ass. Bill Maher, whoever that doctor was at in the show one Friday, I got words for them. I assure you, I promise you, you won't want to miss that. Or if you side with them, you probably will want to miss it. Well, you know me. So, anyway, that's all I got. Peace.